All right, I call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome all the guests. First thing we need to do is approve the agenda.
Can I ask why the fiber project would be executive?
So we have a non-disclosure agreement with some of the folks that we're going to be mentioning, and I don't want to break the agreement.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
First,
Second.
a first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposes? Let's go into for your information. Who's got questions?
Matt, this is probably for you. On the key indicators, when you look down through the rate classes and then you've got the industrials there, those numbers all tracking quite a bit higher than year to date, last year and then the budget. Is that because of the tracker catch up?
Well, that and the tractor's higher was a year ago. If you look 2 years ago, they'd all been lower than the budget because the tracker was under.
So while we're talking about that, I guess, is April the first month then that we'll have a stranded cost payment to Hoosier?
Yes.
So it won't be in this one then.
No.
So will that, how's that gonna be reported? How will we see that?
It'll come through. We're working with our rate consultant yet exactly how that's gonna all come through.
So it'll come through as a line item on the bill though.
From Hoosier, from Hoosier, it'll be a line item on the bill, but
Our rates,
we won't see that.
we change our rates, so
It's already built.
yeah.
And I mean, that's the whole deal. They lowered base rates. We didn't. We're gonna have to pay that like 1.4
Right.
annually. That's gonna come out of that. But it'll just flow through this. We won't even, it won't be a line item. We won't see it individually.
Correct.
No.
Essentially in our retail rates, the merit charge is already baked in because we didn't change it.
But I mean, that was kind of by design.
Correct.
Check register page 12. Refund duplicate payment. How can that happen?
Sam, this is the end to it.
So we had to move to the cloud-based tax or accounting for hometown. When we did that, it got screwed up in the processing of it, or is that something different?
He's looking at something different.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So what that is,
Yeah.
is with the project that's going on there, the developer and them both sent a check in at the same time. So,
I mean, literally,
yeah, we got,
Refund.
yeah, we got two checks and
Because I presume our system, just as we would on the payable side,
We put the check in when we got it, and then we realized, hey, we got more money than we're supposed to here. So then we found out exactly who needed to pay it and exactly how it needed to come.
I mean, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just, and I don't know exactly how your posting works, but when that went to be posted, is that when you found it? Or do they get deposited and then posted?
They get deposited, then posted.
Penny knew though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she received 2 checks from the same account, essentially.
I mean, they came about the same time, and we needed to know who we needed to send it back to.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just,
It actually took them about 2 weeks to tell us exactly who. I don't think they both realized. We were happy to use her.
That was for the deposit, that transformer.
Yes.
I'm going to ask, were there any specific questions on the open action items? Any specific questions from there? If not, anybody have any questions on anything else?
I do have an issue on check register. Legal expenses were paid out, it looks like, for the investigation. I assume that's what isn't that the firm that handled that? I think it's the very last page. So I've been contacted by more members this month about this. We talked about it last month. I also have a request that I got in writing that members want to know what that was for and how much money was spent on it. There it is.
More of that than just the label, and that's,
How much?
I don't know. I thought there was more, if I remember. There was more.
But the majority of that check is for that work that he did on that investigation.
I thought you all got a copy of that invoice.
We did.
So we are being called out as a board on the transparency piece. So I'm going to make a motion again to disclose investigation and how much it cost. And if we vote, I'm going to ask that it's a roll call vote.
So you made a motion.
That's my motion.
Can you repeat that, Jason?
We're going to disclose the results of the investigation and the cost. And I'm bringing this up because I was asked to.
I have been as well.
And I have a copy of the written request along with several other items. If anybody'd like to see it.
regarding that invoice from,
Not the invoice,
no, I'm making a statement, Jason, I'm sorry. Regarding that invoice, there was less than $1,000 for other issues on that invoice. So the 12 were.
So we have a motion that Jason has stated. In a second, it's the minute.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion to make this a roll call vote, so I'll go around the room. Brian? Aye or what? Yeah, you can say yes or aye.
Yes or no?
yes.
Yes.
Suzanne?
No.
Clay? No. Carl? No. Jeff?
No.
Jason?
Yes.
Yes, and I'm yes as well. But it does not pass. All right. What else from before your information? Hearing nothing, we'll go to the next item. The next item on the agenda is approving of the previous meeting.
I've got a question on the very first one. The director voted via email. The directors voted via email and the request failed by unanimous written consent. That's not really a true statement, is it? We vote via email, it only takes one no vote and it wasn't unanimous.
So I think what you're saying is take those last four words out, the request failed.
I would prefer that, yes.
Are you okay with that?
Say that one more time.
Take it out by unanimous written consent, since it was just over the email.
Okay.
Okay, so that change will be made.
You know, it's not, just.
Yes.
We're looking for a motion.
So moved with noted changes. Change.
The first, Suzanne, did you?
Second.
The first and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, the same. All right, motion passes. Next item, Brad, safety minute and cool moment.
So for our safety moment, I just want to kind of update everybody. So about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we had in our ECA, so our national association, put together a zero to commitments. It was kind of the wave one, zero commitments. Really what that was all about was there was some scientific research done, and what they found is essentially repetition drives that front lobe of your brain, and so you can forget some of the major things. So they did this wave one where grounds, PPE, and there was a couple other things that they ingrained in us, right? And we did campaigns around here on it and everything. So now we're at phase two. Phase two is essentially kind of the way they describe it is it's like looking in the mirror. So if we agree to do this, basically what'll happen is in our ECA, we'll send an anonymous survey to every employee here. And they're basically asking, do you abide by these? Do you think we can improve there? It's essentially an anonymous way for us to sort of understand, is there some more work that we need to do in those 4 or 5 fundamental things? So it's kind of again, it's an area where we can focus in on if our guys feel like that we need to focus in on the area anonymously. So anyway, we brought this to the safety committee actually this morning, and everyone agreed that we're going to do phase 2. So just want to let everybody know, you'll see some campaign stuff around. When I say campaign stuff around zero commitments to zero contacts, phase 2, because we're going to be pushing that around. And then, like I said, we'll do the survey, and we'll share the survey results with the board as far as any type of results that we get as far as what we need to do moving forward on training and things like that. So thought that was a cool thing that NREC has put together. So I just wanted to share that. Cool moment. We did a live, this all goes back to, if you look at our mission statement, we're part of the community. What better way, to be a part of our community than to use our talents and our knowledge around safety and the dangers of fire lines. So we actually partnered with first responders. So we invited sheriff's departments, really all the first responders you can think of, and we held it out at Millhausen. And so you can see these two posts that the fire departments did that participate. We had a pretty good showing. Again, we went through a live line demo, kind of talked about some of the dangers and things not to do, right? And this is all being really driven from, again, the community work and the risk. We've had phone calls where lines are in the middle of the road and we get there and the lines are no longer in the middle of the road. So anyway, it was a great event. Our plan is to keep this going. So we know we weren't going to be able to attract everybody to one event. So the plan is we're going to move around the territory to different volunteer fire departments and do the same training. Paul Trinkamp and Matt Eden did the live line, and I thought they did, for being their first or second time doing this, they did an excellent job in the information they were able to provide from their experiences. I learned a few things. So, it was good. So we got a really good feedback. Anyway, I thought I'd share that with everyone.
And I'll echo that as well. I happened to stop by there. You're doing a nice job. So thank you. All right. Next thing, Mr. Navi, I think. Yes. Thank you, guys.
Rick, by the way, not Mr. Navi.
Thanks, Rick.
Some people call me other things, right, Carl?
You answer to them?
I do, generally. Guilty is charged. So you'll have to share.
We can share.
Yeah, what I've got before you guys, just, everybody knows we're talking about broadband and how that relates to county and who does what. And so I thought it'd be good just to kind of give the board an update on where we're at from a county perspective. If anybody's heard about the state of Indiana becoming or offering cities, counties, a status of what's known as broadband ready. The city of Greensburg already is broadband ready. The county effectively is now approved, not officially, but all the paperwork's in. We've got information back to the state. So the county will become broadband ready. So you think, well, what's that mean? Well, what it means basically is that as broadband providers want to expand existing services or create new services, and they want to go after grants or anything like that, it kind of checks that box for that effort. It says to those providers that Decatur County will not stand in the way of any progress. In fact, we'll try to expedite things with that process, such as maybe right-of-way allowances or no permitting fees or fast tracking approvals on different things like that. So, and Brian's coming in the door, Brian Robbins with EDC. He's helped along the way with this and has submitted everything to the state. So Brian, if you have anything to add, please do so. But as you look down through here, eligibility process to that, there's minimum requirements. We have to appoint a single point of contact in Decatur County. That'll be Krista Duvall which is our area plan director. This had to go through our local area plan board and then go through our county commissioners for approval. So that's how the process goes. So it establishes those procedures. Those organizations will more likely be the first point of contact a lot of times for expansion in those areas. So that's kind of the first page of what we've got. So hopefully as you guys look into grants that you can apply for or other things related to broadband, this may be something that you might find handy. And if Brian or I can help, please let us know how that can go.
Hey, Rick, on that, ready, is there like a document, is there an ordinance, is there something that we would need in order to be able to say that?
Well, there is an ordinance that is signed by the area plan director and an ordinance that had been signed by the commissioners.
Okay.
Those are available at the county recorder's office.
Okay.
Because we made sure that we recorded those.
I'm assuming when we have to check the box, they're gonna.
And in the future, and shortly, once we get our stuff from the state, we will probably have some sort of a designation letter that we can attach to all that stuff. Okay. So next, as you go through, I thought it was important to maybe, as we look into what fiber might bring and opportunities that does or doesn't bring, I think it's important that in our community, it was surprising to me some about how little people really knew about what services were currently available. This list that I've got before you is by no means do everything. There's stuff that's there, there's stuff on here that will work for one person, but it may not work for another. Different things like that. As you look at Watch Communications, we talk about that too, a little bit about how that goes. But I did find that there's a lot of opportunity within our county currently for people to get broadband, higher speed than maybe they're used to or would expect to get currently. Again, this is just kind of a short list of what's available. We've got a list put together of kind of general and then providers that have stated that they can service the Greensburg area, the Westport area, the St. Paul area, those type of things. So, when people talk to you about broadband, please have them reach out or I hope to maybe get some of this in the newspaper, maybe going forward, or maybe on the radio, so people kind of can get a little sense of that. And then next in your packet, you'll see what is the latest propagation maps for broadband within Watch Communication. This is a 40-foot propagation, the first copy of this, and as it is red, that's the highest speed level, I believe, is what that kind of denotes. And then it varies as that signal goes out. Now, this signal is very, very dependent on line of sight and trees and all manner of things. And I think really, if you look at all these providers and you look at their ability to provide X speed, you will find that they might advertise one thing, but what you can actually get is quite another story. So and a lot of this is just for your information. So as you discuss and you talk about this, that there are things available. And then you can see the 15-foot propagation is the circles get a little bit smaller. Now, Watch has been doing this for a long time. Watch was the first recipient of the, what kind of grant was it called? I think it's I don't remember, but anyway, they got a grant. They had to provide the service within 6 years of getting that grant. And this has been a process. They're going to be planning on putting additional towers in for 2004, which they list as Millhouse and Enochsburg, and then east of Sand Creek Baptist Church. And then to your point, Jeff, you said that Watch had told you once that the government would pay for them to have a tower. Well, the information I got was that Watch offers a 50-foot tower installed for $2,500, payable by me or David or Ted, but surely not the government, is what I was told. So there's a lot of information, maybe disinformation out here regarding that. And then the other page then is just, you looked at what towers are available in the county. This list will continue to be updated. If there is a mix between like fiber or fixed wireless, this information will come in handy in regards to where those towers are at. And we're going to get an inventory of what's currently towers, but we don't have that yet. And then the last page kind of brings me up to, as you become broadband ready, you will get calls from providers. And there are already some conversations going on about providers looking at Decatur County once we become broadband ready. The city of Lawrenceburg, basically, I think, sold their fiber to Alta Fiber, which, if you listen to Reds ball games, that's what you hear a lot, is Alta Fiber providing their network. And that kind of got me thinking. I know, Brett, you and I talked some time ago about maybe a public-private partnership, and where it was okay if I went to the commissioners and talked to them about that. So I did that. And they were supportive of that. I mean, given the little information we knew or know. But I talked to Mark Kors recently, and if any of you take the Columbus paper, you know, some time ago that the commissioners hooked up with somebody, I can't remember who it is. Meridian. Okay. So Mark and I talked about that a little bit because I asked him if he knew how that was going. According to Mark, he has conversations with one of the commissioners in Columbus, and I've asked him to set up a meeting for me and Mark and him to get together. And I would offer that if anybody here wants to be part of that breakfast or lunch meeting, please let me know and I'll make that happen. But my goal is with that is to try to see how that went and how it's going. Because Mark says that they've got about 1,400 people hooked up already, and that by 2024, they hope to have, almost all the county in some way, shape, or form covered. Now, it's just like your government paid for towers. What does that really mean, and what doesn't it mean? But I think the number was $3 million of ARPA money. Some county commissioners pay to get that partnership together. And I think, is ARPA money still available?
Yes, I think they do. The county still has some.
And I don't know if, what's the other one?
Okay.
No, it's not.
Infrastructure bill or next level?
No, it's what they're trying to build the swimming pool with and some of that kind of money.
Oh, it's ready?
Ready grant, yeah, ready. I don't know if a project like this would qualify for ready, but I do think there are funds available that, depending on what is researched, what's decided, what's set upon direction, all those players ought to be around the table and be talking about it and trying to figure out the best course of action. So anyway, whatever help I can give to this group, please let me know. The commissioners have asked me if I could be part of helping, be somebody that can make some calls or do some stuff like that. Brian is a vital asset from an economic development point of view. So with that, I'll be quiet and listen for questions if you have any.
Hey, Rick, definitely on the Meridian thing. So, and Sam, I don't know if you want to speak up, but Sam spent last 2 days at section meeting with Bartholomew's engineer over there.
Okay.
So definitely if you guys have a meeting, if I don't necessarily need to.
If he's the designee, I will make sure
The
that
designee.
Sam is invited to the meeting. So thank you for letting me share that.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
That's what you're doing too, Rick, on this whole process.
I mean, just to close, it kind of hits home whenever you've got 4 grandkids down by the, you can't get internet. So they ended up trying with Watch. They couldn't get the service, but they ended up with Starlink. Now it's costly, about $119 a month. But a lot of people I've talked to are paying currently $90 a month for different services, things like that. So I think, from a return point of view, that's kind of table stakes, is that $90 to $110 a month. for that kind of service. But so far, they're happy, and Paul Stone's got Starlink. He's happy with it. So again, I just wanted to make everybody aware of the options available in the community and what broadband ready means to the community that might be going forward.
Thanks again. Thanks, Brett. All right, we will be going into executive session at this time. I'm going to ask for,
All right, we're coming out of executive session.
yeah.
I got another.
All right, so we'll continue with talking about grant updates. Dan?
Go for it.
Go. Okay. So there was a grant that just came available to us. It's broadband technical assistance. It's open now and it's open until June 20th. To be an eligible area, you just must promote broadband expansion in a rural community. Example projects would be helping recipients identify broadband resources and planning for delivery of broadband services and preparing studies to support broadband, kind of right where we're at. It's a $20 million grant overall. 5 million of it is set aside for just co-ops with a minimum award of 50,000 up to a max of $1 million. So that is something that I will be pursuing. And that's basically just for engineering studies to support feasibility studies and those type of things. So that is something that we will do in-house and pursue that grant. The next thing is just a couple meetings that we do have scheduled. We do plan to meet with Great Plains on May 4th, just to have further discussions. And then we have a meeting on May 11th with the Indiana Broadband Office, along with many other REMCs were invited to that to discuss the Indiana's Okra grants and the BEAD grant that's upcoming too. We feel the Okra grant, it should be opening soon. It was supposed to open in April, we heard. They pushed that back. I still don't have an official date. I got a feeling this meeting might give us an official date for that. But it's a great opportunity. Rumor heard around $80 million in the state of Indiana for that grant. Should be rewarded. We should fit the bill for that in most of our territory. And then there is opportunities for smart grid technology through the DOE. So we're looking into those grant opportunities to possibly do a fiber ring and then do smart technology along that. They kind of go hand in hand with the fiber project. So if you can pair the two together, you might be able to get that ring in areas that are heavily served where you're not getting grants because you're building the backbone in that for the smart grid. So you just got to be strategic with where you're placing those grants. And then the BEAD grant is still coming in the future. We still expect that early 20. So we're just waiting for more information on that. There'll be more to come. And I think that meeting May 11th may give us a lot more from the state on that, because the state will actually be handing those grants out on the applications. Any questions about grants and where we're at and pursuing? And then the other thing is we recently had conversations with Accord. They will be changing their membership structure in the near future. They've had enough REMCs, enough companies come on board that their rates kind of now was those fiber lines. You know, you gave them so many fiber lines and that was mostly of your membership. It will probably be changing to an actual dollar amount. Those fiber lines, they're getting so many that they're not as meaningful to them. So they're going to want to raise capital to become a member. And I think that was the end of June.
July.
The end of July.
Yeah.
Of when they expect for that change. So if we want action on Accord, we probably need to make a decision sooner or later, or it's going to be a lot more expensive to become part of them.
And on that, so they have not got Ford has not got the middle mile grant announcement yet. No one has. They haven't announced their grants. So that's the one where we would go in and get to be able to build from essentially Southeastern up to Rush Shelby for 50 cents on the dollar. Probably past, I think it's 4%.
Well, they said they would work with us on it.
We don't know yet if you can get that. So obviously we,
But they were only going to do that if we remember.
yeah, they would.
They would do the route if we remember.
Correct.
If
They
they're
would-
not, they're going to do the cheapest route they can get.
Yes.
If we remember, if we're not, they're.
They're going as fast as they can. Yeah.
But I do think a decision we're going to have to make sooner than later, like you said, because they are changing that structure. He did say that, you know, if we became a member, you got a seat at the table at a court, right? Number one. But if, once this middle mile grant is awarded, that will be grandfathered into their structure today, right? So we would be able to put forth, let's just say you become a member today, and then we get an announcement in a month from now that they got the grant, so we could build the line for 50 cents on the dollar. Those strands could be just like today, they could, two strands that you would give to a court, and then you get paid by a court according to those miles in there. That's not how that structure is going to look in the future. What they're saying is this one would be grandfathered in, just because we're waiting on the grant. That makes sense. In other words, if we here in a month, we could do a court and we do it, we will be able to, even if they change the structure, if we're a member.
July 31st is the drop dead date.
Yeah.
Either play.
But you're still going to give them two strands.
Yes.
That's food for thought. I think if we put that on the agenda for next month. Talking about it a little bit further.
And I think they have a lot more information to support the business model than what maybe they had the first time that we can share with that in preparation.
Would that be a presentation by James again, or you would be giving us that information?
We could do it either way, probably. I mean,
If
it's
we're,
probably,
we're going to talk about it next month, it would probably be good to have that information ahead of time if possible.
Yep.
If that's coming from you.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I know James had said he would come down again, but
Unless he's presenting then.
I don't know that that would be needed. Whatever information he gives him, if you want to pass it on.
Okay.
Anything else? Rich? All right. We'll go to the next item on the agenda. Process from the annual meeting committee.
Okay, so I'm leading our annual meeting committee internally here. I know we've kind of talked about this till we're blue in the face to a degree with the bios. But we have kind of all new faces working on the annual meeting this year. And after going through the process of getting the bios submitted this year, I wanted to kind of get in the forefront. So going forward, we could kind of all have an agreement of what that looks like. So I'm just going to read off what our suggestion as a committee was moving forward with the bios. Looking for any feedback on that. And if we can get an agreement, that would be wonderful. If not, we'll probably review it again at some point in the near future. But what we're looking for is that the bios would only require a defined word count. Currently, that word count's 200. And that's basically because we're limited on the space when we publish stuff, or just limited on how much you can put on the paper. So we'd like to keep that. But other than that, we would like to remove ourselves from it. So you could still provide the template for people who struggle with writing their own bio. It would only be a suggestion though, not a hard guideline. So the template is there. If you want it, you can use it. If not, you still need to type it up and put it in paragraph form for you. So it's only a suggestion. We would not edit their submitted bio, and we would only send it back if it was over the word count. So if a candidate submitted a bio and it had grammar mistakes, misspellings, that's the way it would be submitted unless they asked for our help. If they wanted our help in checking it and reviewing it, then we would review it with them and make sure we got on the same page with it. We would ask for hard deadlines with those. So anybody that was asking for assistance would need to submit it at least a week before the final, so we could go back and forth and make sure we're all in agreement on that. And then with that hard deadline, we'd like to say candidates that do not meet that deadline, we will only put in the bio was not submitted. And if candidates submit a bio on the deadline and go over the word count, we will try to send that back if we have enough time. If we do not receive it back in enough time, we will just cut off at 200 words. So whatever's in there, it will stop if it's in mid-sentence. I feel this process just eliminates any questions from our employees of reviewing the bios. The only other suggestion I would, if as a board you feel the bios need to be reviewed, that you add another week process and it goes to you guys to govern what's in the bios. And if you guys can agree, you agree. If not, it goes back and forth between you guys and it removes us from the picture of it. This year we struggled again a little bit with getting them in on time in order to get them submitted. We had 2 bios that went back and forth. So I am just trying to remove that from us. And I think that's what we're trying to do with the guidelines, but we're still having to decide, does that meet the guidelines or not? And I don't think that's fair to an employee to say that for a bio for a candidate. So that's my suggestion kind of moving forward. And we can outline this directly and give it to you guys so it's very clear. We would give exact dates when we need things. I just would need to know if you guys, first of all, you're okay with this. And second of all, do you guys want to have approval over the bios, or you're okay with whatever anybody puts in a bio?
At this point, we're talking about 2024, correct?
Yes,
So you have time for us to,
the bios are submitted, so it's done.
time for us to give you an answer.
But I don't want the answer in March of 2024.
By the end of the year would be plenty of time.
So,
We can draft what he said into policy and then bring it forward.
And to me, the happy median, I hear Suzanne saying we have time. The longer we wait, the less importance it has. And so therefore, I think, well, it doesn't have to be done this month. I think if we're going to address this, we need to address it in the relatively near future while it still has some freshness.
Can we have a document of what you just said, basically?
yes, I'm happy.
Have that for us so we can have something?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I asked to present at the board meeting, because I felt it was important from our committee that this was a takeaway that is a struggle every year.
Well, and I, for one, would say that it's not appropriate for us to put you or your staff or the RMC staff in the position of making those decisions. That's not.
And that's, to me, this eliminates that.
Right.
Who's your committee? Who is your committee?
Jeannie Lockley, Crystal, Jason, Abby, and Jenny Meyer.
Yeah, if you can go ahead and send to us basically what you just shared with us, and we'll try to bring that up to maybe, if not next month, the following. Okay.
Yep, I will get it typed up and have it sent out with everything that I have here. I tried to abbreviate, so I didn't.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thanks, Sam. Anybody have any additional questions?
Thanks, Sam, for your iPad help. I got it.
All right, we'll go to the next item. The CEO and Director of One-on-Ones. On at the last meeting, approved Brad's goals, and included on that were one-on-ones. Brad had sent out an email with potential dates and times, and I did not hear from everyone, and so I'm going to ask Clay, can you go ahead and let us know which one you're going to be attending now?
No.
Why not?
Because there's more than, no, I can't.
No, but see, these need to be done.
Say I wouldn't do
These
it.
need to be done by May.
Said that.
I didn't even hear from you. I didn't even hear from you. Did not even hear from you about needing more time or anything to that effect. So
Need more time, Steve.
look at your iPad now. These have to be done before our next board meeting. Okay?
So
Carl, you need to do that as well.
Well, the one that you have listed there, I couldn't make that. So I need.
So there's 20 different,
I'll find,
20 different timeframes, and you can't make any of them.
like I said, I'll find one that I can do.
Yeah.
Get back.
Pass it back to Brad. I'm sure he's gonna be open on some of those dates, okay? And then Jeff, what were you gonna say?
I don't feel comfortable doing it until after the evaluation process is completed. And I don't know that we committed to having it done by May when we
Well,
voted to do it.
we committed to having it done, and I don't think that was stipulated when we made that commitment. I mean, your request. So I'd like to get them done by the next board meeting.
Okay.
Okay. So you guys will get the information back. If there's a date that didn't work on what was passed to you, and kindly make a suggestion on this one will work for me. Okay, any other questions on the one-on-ones? Any questions? I guess I have a question. All right, we'll go to the next item. See you, okay, Brett.
Yeah, so going to go over March data as it relates to our operating metrics here. So first one, I'm just going to go over some updates on some projects and then open it up if there are any other questions on projects. First one is the operation building remodel. I'm going to let Matt's the leader for the operations building. So Matt.
We have initially met with everybody we're gonna meet with. We've received back one of the initial ideas. We're gonna tell everybody we have told everybody, I think there's one more I've gotta reach back out to and follow up with on, but we would like to have everybody's ideas and estimated costs by June. So that way we can start to narrow things down in July.
Any questions on that one? Second one's the New Point project. So we livened the New Point project last week. And now they're working on the retirement that goes through so they got what they need there. We're retiring out the poles that go through the field there. So they'll finish that up. And then we're going to move D&T over to liven our underground here inside the building. And then we're going to get on the pole replacements. So I left that on there too. So as far as pole replacements, our crews are up to 88. And then they had also asked, there's some Hendrix line, which it's the coated line that you see. And they're 3-phase Hendrix lines, but the poles are pretty simple. And so their suggestion is maybe we do some of those poles in-house because you're going to get charged for a 3-phase pole, yet it's not a complicated pole. So we're actually looking at those now to see if we can bring some of those in-house, but we'll move D&T over as soon as we get the line next to the building up and going. That's the next priority. Then we'll move over the red tack poles. Questions on any of that? All right, I'm going to move to our metrics. So if you remember March, the median temperature was about 7% cooler than our 5-year average, which 7% doesn't sound like a lot, but it's quite a bit. So it definitely impacted financials. If you look at the HDD, this is the amount of degree days that are above 65, it was roughly, so our 5-year average is 671. It came in at 756, which this drives obviously electric usage. If you look at our energy that we purchased from Hoosier, so this is our 5-year average dot right here. Last month in March came in right here. We were just about 2.3% over our 5-year average for March. And then our demand was actually about 2.6 below our 5-year average. If you look at all the classes, this was sort of interesting, and the reason I go through that data I just went through is because we are so weather and temperature dependent on what usage looks like compared to budget. And you can actually tell in all 4 of our classes, they moved closer to budget. If you look at residential, I mean, we went from being basically 23% below budget, and it bounced back up this last month and minus 3.3. So we're still under budget, but it made huge comeback. And then if you look at commercials, all moved positive, which is that time of year that they typically will move up that way. And then obviously our transmission is knocking it out of the park as far as what we had in the budget compared to what they're using. So big picture of usage, when you roll it all up year to date, last month, year to date, we're about 10% under what was budgeted from sales. And if you look up, we made quite a bit of ground back. That's 1 month. Typically you don't see this, right? And we moved it to basically 6.35. So it made up quite a bit of ground in that 1 month. That was cooler. These are sort of eye charts, but essentially what you're going to see is the sale of electricity is much higher than what was in our budget. Power cost obviously follows that, right? So it's much higher than what was in our budget, but our gross margin, which is essentially the subtraction of those two costs, is right where we budgeted. And actually, if you look at the cumulative gross margins, which is power cost minus, our sales minus the power cost, you can't even see the difference in the line. So as far as our financials, we're tracking exactly where we would want to be. I'm going to move to outages. I should knock on wood somewhere, but it's been very, very quiet. We've had no major outages so far from the very beginning of the year. Major outage would be anything over this statistical line right here. You can see we've had a few blips, but nothing even close to that line. And then from the last month, the number 1 contributor was trees not in right of way. The dead ash trees are continuing to cause problems. And then number 2 was trees other, which are just normal trees.
Are we about out of ash trees?
Oh, no. Oh, no. No, they'll still be coming back.
We are being a little bit more aggressive on our danger trees. So we've got we receive a lot of phone calls. Again, I'm going to make an announcement that if you see an ash tree that is going to hit the lines and it's dead, call that in. We'll send out a crew to take a look at it. If it's outside of the right of way, we'll top it just to make sure that it doesn't hit our lines. If it's obviously inside the right of way, we'll cut it. Questions on any of the projects we got going on or any of the metrics that I went over?
I do have a question. On the digester project, will they be generating power?
No, so what they're gonna do is collect the gas and then they'll clean the gas. They're gonna truck about 15 loads of gas a day. So no, right now they are not.
So they will be a consumer.
Correct.
Thank you.
And it's I don't have the exact numbers because we actually just met with them this morning to get some, it's gonna be a considerable load increase.
Any other questions for Brett? All right, we'll continue on then with the financial update, Matt.
Ready?
In general, balance sheet, the biggest thing is our current assets went down and our current liabilities went down. We paid a lot of AP and accrued liabilities. I mean, they both went down. And a lot of, over half of it was plant stuff, so. Any questions on the balance sheet? Okay, this is the statement of operations. This is the detailed version here with it more broken out. In general, the notes that I have is controllable expenses are under budget in the maintenance department. And that's mainly due to the right of way, and billing is over because of how we're training yet, and we're not done with that. As far as everything else, it being being the third month in, in general, some things are over, some things are under. A lot of it's timing issues. I mean, some things have hit already and they haven't hit. It's sales are under, and or sales are over a little bit, but our gross margins are under is what I should have said there, meant to say. We did catch up a bunch, as Brett said earlier, and March was a very high usage month considering we took back, with it being the third month in though, we moved things quite a bit right away. With 3 months, 1 month can make a big difference. In general, there's not a huge amount to say with this, I don't think yet. Is there any questions on any of this? Cash flow, as the balance sheet showed, we paid out a lot of money. Our cash went down. I mean, it went down $672,000. So. One thing Jenny and I talked about, I do have a few things from this morning. As the project there around New Point gets finished, there's going to be a large cost there. As we talked about earlier in the year, we will run short on cash at some point here in the next probably 60 days. I did get in all our 219s, so we can now borrow our maximum amount on our construction work plan. That was all approved in the last month. So we do have the ability to borrow $2.5 million, and the rate sits today, we're 3.6 on that from the federal government at 30-year money. So that's fairly cheap. The daily fund right now actually is paying 4.1. So if we wanted to play arbitrage, we could do that and make 0.5%. But I don't know that I would recommend that. That's not enough to justify that, but we will probably need to borrow some money in the next 60 days, depending on how fast we get the bills for that.
How often do they change the rates in the daily fund?
I'm not 100% sure there, but it's pretty frequently.
That's the CFC, right?
Yes. I don't look at it every day in general. So I can look at it and let you know.
Does it get more complicated when the feds meet from the standpoint of?
Things have swung more wildly than I ever imagined they would.
Because they're meeting in
I mean,
May.
I have watched the rates swing 25 basis points a day sometimes. And that's from what I have gathered talking to others we had an accounting and finance section meeting earlier this week. And talking to some of the people that have been doing this for much longer than myself, they said that does not happen. So I mean, I've seen days where it started 4%, a week and a half later, it's down to 3.5. I mean, everything's just wildly fluctuating now. So
Jason, are you looking for just some past history on that daily fund?
I just want to know how often they update the rates.
We can,
Well, I mean, because you said you could get money for 3.6, daily fund's 4.1. How long is 4.1 good? That's the,
we can lock it in we can't lock it in for a super long time, but I mean, you can get 6 months you could lock money in for 6 months to profit. I mean, that's very doable. And then also, I mean, we could prepare Hoosier bill, and that gives us a return too.
but not 4.1.
It's pretty high. It's usually
Like in the threes, isn't it?
I'd have to look. It used to be, but it's higher than that now. I don't know that off the top of my head. I can I thought it usually ran about whatever it isn't quite what the line of credit runs, but it's not too far off from that. Because in general, if they got money to pay their stuff down, they give us credit for it. They'd rather borrow money from us than from elsewhere.
Because you haven't been, it doesn't look like you've been utilizing the prepay from Hoosier as extensively as we have in the past.
No, because we don't have money to do that. I mean, we pulled money out of the daily fund to use your bill tomorrow, so. But it costs every time we move money out of that, so we try to only do it every so often. But that's not something that's gonna get any action today. That was more of an FYI.
But we have been able to, I mean, we thought for our budget, we thought we were gonna need this money a little bit earlier than now, so we have stretched it, but I think it's because of we're capitalizing a lot more because the guys are doing a bunch of work and the under spending right now.
We also sold all that wire too.
And we sold the wire.
That made a big difference.
But when you have to pay for this New Point deal,
That's probably gonna be, that's gonna be close. But we haven't got the bill yet, so, I mean, till the project's done, I mean, we're not gonna get the bill this month anymore, so
but you know it's coming.
I do believe it will be coming,
In the not too distant future, right?
so.
So we are taking a little bit of a risk waiting until next month's board meeting, but Matt and I kind of talked about it and I think we're okay until we,
Well, I mean, we can always borrow short-term money if we have to.
yeah, but I think they're wanting
But-
approval for that too.
Okay,
Am I right on that? Did you guys want us to get board approval for short term?
borrow on the line of credit to pay the bills.
Was it approval or just notification?
I know long-term was approval, but I don't know if you, I mean, if we have to pay the Hoosier bill, do you want me to get approval
It
to,
would be in those emails with the budget deal. If somebody want to look at that.
I mean, I can do it however I'm fine, either way. I will say we don't want to not pay the Hoosier bill on time though. But the interest rate right now on the line of credit is 6.75 if we borrow. So we can borrow 30-year money at 3.66, I think it is. I had it up earlier. I got it right here. We can borrow 30-year money at 3.66, or we can borrow current money at 6.75. So that's kind of where it stands as today, and that will change tomorrow. It's, and if we do put in to borrow, they put the money out on at certain intervals, so it's not like you're gonna get, you put in your stuff and then you pick the date you want it to come, and they gotta have at least 10 days notice, so you don't know what you're gonna get, especially today.
And so when Matt was saying that this 2.4 is available, I just want to be clear that, so in order to borrow the money from the plan that you submit and get approval for, you have to build it, right? And then you have to have it inspected to the RUS specs. And then you have to submit that paperwork where you're signing, the engineer is signing off saying it's built to the specs. You submit that to the government, right? And then they allow you to draw down loans. We were able to use Chris to do this, so that did save us some money instead of having to bring someone in. And that's what he's talking about is he went out and did the inspections, used his PE license to say, yes, these are built accordingly. And Matt sent all that stuff off and we received approval back. So that's what he means, that whole process.
Trying to be prepared for when time comes, that way we can pull whatever we can. So, I mean, if interest take a dive to 2.5%, I will send an email, hey, please let me borrow all of it. That's
I can see that now.
probably not, I mean,
Good. Any other questions for Matt from financial perspective? Thanks, Matt. Hearing none, let's go to the next item. And it is the roundup trustee appointments. And I think Dale and Brian and myself are included in that. when do we have to have those? When is it, when do you guys meet again, do you know? Or when do they meet?
I mean, next month, I think is what we're targeting.
For us to have somebody appointed. Okay,
It can go out farther if we had to.
Because from what I read, and this was the first I knew about Ray, but from what I read here, there's a possibility that one of the other ones
you might be okay.
might be okay. Is that?
That'd be for, the additional term, if I'm not.
One district to another, from another one to mine, if he's not,
See, I'm not sure how that, the way it's stated. Because if,
and also, and
yeah, because I think her term would end this year. I mean, they do too. So she could potentially take over for the one you
he's
have.
so inclined, and I just saw him the other night. I didn't know anything about it until I read this.
Okay.
So Cindy's moving into that district.
Apparently that, well, that's what I read from here. I don't,
I do, I can talk to her.
yeah, because I know Ray, but like I said, I didn't know that he was considered.
Okay.
I don't think they meet until July, is what I think.
Okay, but we'll have something for next month.
That's what I would suggest.
That's the intent.
And the only stipulations are they have to be in our district and a member. There's no,
They don't have to be in your district to be a member. I believe we just changed it to a member. They don't have to be in your
I
district.
think you're right.
Mine's not in my district, but he is a member. They have to be a
it doesn't
member.
matter if they're related to anybody either. It's,
Those are two good questions.
right, I don't think,
It doesn't have to be in your district. It does have to be a member. I'm not sure on the relative part.
I
I
don't
think so.
think nepotism is in.
I think it just has to be an REMC member.
I don't know.
Changed that the year we
All,
changed that the year because mine was not an REMC member and then
I feel like, yeah, the nepotism part was not.
I'll verify, but I'm almost positive that would
Yeah.
make no sense. That we even.
All right, so
We
we'll
can
take,
volunteer people. Volunteer.
we'll take care of that then, next month. Next item, guys, I know this was brought up, I believe, at the last meeting. Brett has included regarding, email voting discussion. And, so there's a couple of items that he sent to us. I hope you've read them. But I'm open for discussion. I think we need to talk through it.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised when I did a CO round to find out like what else people do. And no one allows this. And I think legal's going to tell you too, right? That the whole point of a board is to debate, right?
Discuss.
And discuss and look at different perspectives. So if you're voting through email and there's one person that doesn't, what that's telling you is it needs a debate, is what legal's going to tell you as far as the duty of care. So that's my recommendation, is leave it the way it is, but change it. And if you Google this, there's a bunch of different articles. They pretty much all say pretty similar things as the article that I put on here.
on other boards I have been on for this situation, is it going to be a unanimous? Can I get a tentative answer from you, not etched in stone, but if one person votes no, then it's a board meeting the following month. If everyone votes yes, then a formal email goes out to reply yes. On other, I mean, I think that's just
So you're saying there's a question asked in advance?
in advance, do you foresee yourself? And if there's more discussion, you may go the other way. It's not concrete. But then if one person does vote no, we'll debate it and discuss it at the next board meeting. Or in a special board meeting, or basically a live versus electronically.
You know, if this is utilized though, in an urgent situation,
Right.
then I think a special board meeting may even be more appropriate to get through it. So there's discussion.
Or if, Matt says, hey, interest drops to 2.5, do I get a yes that I can borrow? I'm just using that
No,
jokingly, but as a simple, since we've already discussed. Or we say tentatively, if anyone's going to vote no, let's move it to the board meeting.
And I think what you could do,
No, or have additional questions.
like, so to your point, using that example, if interest rates were to drop and Matt's like, hey, we need to get this out, right? We could send out with approval from the chairman, we would send it out, say, hey, vote on this. And if someone said no, then you guys would call a special meeting. You could do it over phone. Our bylaws allow that.
That's just how other boards I've been on have done.
Other thoughts?
I think it's an ultra conservative approach. I mean, you're not going to take any action rash unless it's unanimous. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
Like, thoughts?
Except it wasn't the way it's written or the way things are happening now. So if you got one no vote, it's null and void. There ought to be some more. There ought to be able to get some more discussion in on it to. So if we've ever come into it, and even from my standpoint, if I seen somebody vote no, I moved on
Yeah, because that stopped it.
because it stopped it. There's no sense to look into it.
So we're good? Are they keeping what we have? Okay. You ready? Yeah, we'll go to the policy.
So these 4 policies, it's marketing, membership, or you guys can read them, but they're materially, there's no differences here, right? They just came up for review. We made some grammar corrections, but we don't recommend or see any changes for these, so.
We're gonna do them all in one.
I think we'll just do them all in one.
So moved.
Second. You got a first and a second. Jeff, did you second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Next item. Under education discussion.
Yeah, so I thought this would be good for the board to know, although we're not doing anything with it. I just want you to know that this is available in case we do something, some type of load control in the future. It's important to know that we have this tool coming. So essentially, I'm going to give you I'm reutilizing some Hoosier slides here, but I'm going to give you some background as to what I mean here. So number one, so Hoosier changed how their tariffs work, right? So the number one and probably the biggest thing is during the summer and our winter peaks, right? So the 3 months in the summer, 3 months in the winter, we're no longer going to be billed on Hoosier's coincident peak. So in other words, that's Hoosier's peak, right? As an entire system. So normally what would happen is we would get called 24 hours ahead of time. They'd say, hey, we think it's going to be a peak, right? Load control if you can. During that load control, they measure your highest peak at that point in time, and that's what you get billed on. That is now changing as of April 1st to now the MISO peak, right? So now instead of saying we're going to bill you on your peak at Hoosier's peak, it's now we're going to bill you on the peak at MISO. That was the big change in this last Hoosier's rate change. So no longer is load control a requirement, right? This changed some of the comparison why we did that. So no longer will we get information or get a call from Hoosier saying we're having a load control, control your water heaters or whatever you have on the system from a peak shaving standpoint. So Hoosier developed this because we're not going to get that from them. They've developed this peak prediction service is what they're calling it, right? But what they're saying now is I'm going to give you the data and you as the co-op need to be able to read this data and predict your own when you think MISO is going to peak essentially. So for folks and we don't have any load control devices, right? Or we don't have the peak reduction program anymore. So this doesn't affect us, but if it did, let's say we had a generator program or we had a water heater program, right? We would have to predict our own peak MISO's peak and call our own load control events. So why this is important is because myself and my team is going to have to really watch these things and really get attuned to essentially reading the data and being able to call load controls so that in the future, if we do load control tariffs or anything that would require us to say we're going to peak, that we'd be able to do it essentially. Stop me if you have questions. So if you want to kind of an eye chart here of what changed in our billing. So production demand, which is our biggest demand that we get, right, is production demand. These are the fixed cost of capacity essentially. So these are generators, things like that. So instead of doing, this used to be, right, Hoosier's peak, it's now going to be the MISO peak, MISO peak, MISO peak. And then again, whatever you do here is going to dictate, you know, the average of the next 3 months. In the winter, it's the same thing. MISO, MISO, MISO. Whatever you do here is going to dictate what you get here. So the really only change here is instead of this being Hoosier CP, it's now MISO CP.
So wait,
Yep.
so will there be more of an economic incentive to participate in load control compared to MISO CP versus Hoosier CP?
It depends. Are you talking about economics from Hoosier standpoint?
For us?
Yeah.
We have more incentive now that we're going to be measured against the MISO peak rather than Hoosier peak.
No. No, there's really no incentive. There's still incentive to shave the peaks,
But that incentive is going to be the same.
Correct. It's the same. The difference is timing. So MISO usually peaks an hour to 2 hours prior to Hoosier's peak. So if you're going to do load controls to shave your peaks, right? The whole idea is shave the peaks, fill the valleys. If you're going to do it now, you're going to do load controls probably 2 hours, but the incentive to do it is the same. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it's just shifting the time period in the day. It's not shifting the actual.
Most of the time, MISO peaks about, like I said, an hour to 2 hours earlier than Hoosier's peak. Transmission and substation demand, that's not as big a demand that we get charged from Hoosier as according to production demand, but it's still another demand. So essentially the way this one looks is you have the MISO CP, and then it flips. So these are during the peak months in the summer and the peak months in the winter, it will still be controlled by MISO's CP. In the off peaks, the shoulders, it'll be Hoosier's CP. So that's a little change. I don't know that it's going to matter a whole lot. I'll be, really watching these bills and watching our loads during these first couple cycles once we get back into peak. But I don't think it's going to change a whole lot. Well, I know it's not going to change a whole lot from going, in the off-peak months. And then substation radiator line, this is the third billing demand we get from Hoosier. And it's the same thing, right? So it's all based on NCP, which is our peak. So before I show you that, during the peaks, so your winter peak is December, January, February, and then your summer peak is June, July, August. You're going to receive every single day a report from, essentially this is coming from ACES, but Hoosier will be sent. ACES is putting it together. We're going to receive a report. Every single day we'll get a report. Every single day of every month that we're in the peaks, which are the ones I told you about, 3 months summer, 3 months winter, we're going to get a report and it's going to tell us how likely today is the peak. It's going to give you some information. So the first page we're going to get is this in here. This is a summary page that you can go to and it kind of tells you, okay, so for tomorrow, it's day ahead. Right? So we're going to get this every 24 hours for the day ahead. They're saying that it's unlikely that MISO is going to peak on tomorrow's date, right? And then what it's going to tell you is it's going to say, this is the next 5 days forecast, what those forecasted demands are for MISO, the last 5 days and what those were, and then what the peak was in 2022. And then it's going to give you the actual demand. In other words, what the be, right? So essentially, really all you need to do is look at this from our standpoint, right? So every single day, we're gonna get this report, we're gonna pull it up, and if it says unlikely, I'm probably not gonna pay much attention to it. If it starts getting into, likely or very likely, then we'll start paying attention to it, because that means we're getting closer to when they're predicting MISO to peak. So on top of that report, you're gonna get this report, and this is an eye chart, and you're really supposed to just look at the colors, right? So you look at the colors, this says this is the peak right now. So everything that's this color in here, these are actual data points, right? So they're actuals. Everything that's in green, yellow, or red, these are predictions, right? So this is MISO saying our entire, from Canada all the way down to the tip of Texas. These are the gigawatts, I think is actually what term they're in. These are what those actual demands look like, and here's what we're forecasting for the system. So if I look at this, right now, the highest is 87 gigawatts, right? And they're predicting based on this set of data that on the 9th and the 10th hour of 1:31 is when they're saying it's very likely for us to peak. Now, as we get closer and closer to these timeframes, obviously, we're going to want to watch these and we're going to want to watch these. But if we were to control, these would be the timeframes that you would control based upon this data. So only reason I'm showing you this is because we're going to be watching this so that we can get used to what the reports are telling us, and sort of playing around, because we can play around with it now, right? It's kind of saying, hey, we think it's going to be peak, and see how close we are and try to get good at this so that if we do in the future, and we know we have strategic projects in the queue, right, that may involve some peak shaving, this is the tool set we're going to use to be able to call peak. We're going to be responsible to call our own load controls, not use your own. And it's going to be based upon, again, the MISO market. Questions on any of that?
So who do you shave? I mean, who's the one gonna think quit using electricity?
Today, we don't have any programs. Let's say tomorrow.
Oh, you're sure you can develop a program.
If we do, then we will use this. So let's say we start generator program and we say, hey, we're going to pay for the install of this generator, but you have to agree to let us control it, right? So what that means is we're going to have to send a signal to turn this thing on when we think the peak's going to happen. Otherwise, you're not going to shave the peak. So it's data to help us predict when do you want to try to shave. But right now, we don't have any programs.
So would any solar programs help shave any of that? Because it would be, obviously, probably most of the peaks are dark time. Well, maybe not. I don't think.
No, you catch a little bit of it in the summer.
Summertime. So, yeah.
But I don't, that's a good question that I don't know, Carl. I don't know that you can use solar to off. I mean, it's automatically doing it, so it's not like I need to call them, right?
Rollers along, they had battery,
But you're gonna,
they have to be big.
I mean, the battery from the solar, you're gonna have to use,
Well, if you're using solar and it's
Now, if you talked about battery and solar and we created a project to say, hey, that could be,
the stored energy that you've got in the battery. I mean, if you're gonna shut things down, you're gonna have to count on the energy that's in the battery to run everything until everything comes back on, correct?
I'm not talking about shutting it off with this program.
No,
So,
I'm just trying to.
yeah, so, the wave of our electricity during the day looks like this, and then it goes like this, right? Day in and day out. The whole name of the game is shave your peaks, fill your valleys. That improves your load factor, which makes your power cheaper, right? So my point is if we create a program, we're not gonna, I guess you could do that. You could go out to the 7 when you think the peak is and just shut it off and save a lot of money. I don't think the members will like that.
Yeah, maybe I said it wrong.
But I guess there could be members volunteer to be flipping. I mean, that's always,
LMR.
that could be part of the moderator program is effectively, hey, I'll turn the power off.
Sure.
Just flip my switch and turn off my meter.
Again, this data for us right now, we're not using it for anything, but we are monitoring, and I want the board to know that we do have a tool. We're gonna start using this so that in the future, if we do create, I mean, water heaters is a great one, right? So you have to know when are you gonna send, we don't have any devices, but if we did have devices, you have to know when you're gonna send the signal to turn the water heaters off, right? And when I say turn the water heaters off, if you had a water heater program, you would say, hey, remember, if you let us control your water heater during the 2 hours of peak or 3 hours of peak, we can turn that setting way, way down during that peak. You can save money if you have a bunch of them on there to do it.
And this is where the smart grid and stuff comes in down the road.
But down the road, when Sam was talking about like the need for fiber and all that, the whole industry is going to smart grid because one of the benefits of smart grid also is peak shaving and valley filling, right? So it's again, if you can do that, you can really cut your cost of your co-op's power bill, which in turn,
So can you call on an LMR to shave peak?
if it's not registered through, which all of ours are, but if you chose not to register them through MISO, that could be a possibility, yes.
So that was my next question. If we
We could have Decatur County LMRs.
yeah, that we controlled,
Yes,
that aren't registered with MISO.
Correct.
yes.
We could develop a program just like the LMR program, use this data to drive that, but it can't be registered through.
You're not going to be able to sign up the same resource or same,
So
Correct.
that's where the generators, you could kick on 1,000 generators in Decatur County. I'm sure there's at least that many. For a 2-hour stretch, you take 1,000 people off.
but again, it's got to be a collective
Yes.
to make it.
And you got to hit the right time.
Yeah. If two.
They tell you that I'm 30 days after the fact. Right? Isn't that about what it is? They tell you the time it occurred 30 days after the fact.
It'll be interesting to see.
That's pretty good.
It'll be interesting to see for the co-ops that do have low control programs to see how often they actually hit it. Because if you don't hit the peak, you're not,
You just wasted your time.
just wasting some of it, yeah.
It's like that article that came out from that co-op there by Fort Wayne that has they're not part of Wabash and they have this big battery. That one of the things the CEO said in there is, if we hit the peak right, if we miss it once, we don't save a dime for the month. But if they hit it right, that 1 month, they saved themselves like $5 million. It was an astronomical amount of money from reading that article. I don't know, it should, I mean, I could probably find that if you'd like to read it. But it was pretty interesting as to, since they're buying a transmission, so for them, when the congestion gets super high, if they flip their battery on, they drop all their
But
stuff.
I mean, the initial cost of that,
Oh, and they said they paid for it in the first year because they hit the peaks right. Because all they did was shave the peak. That was the only
gotta be big.
It's huge.
big, yeah, it's a
They're also
lot of
not
money.
under all power requirement either, so.
Yeah, they have the ability to do anything effectively. But yeah, they had a big.
Any other questions on this?
Thanks, Brad. So we're ready to hear about the Hoosier Board.
Yeah, it really wasn't a board meeting this month. The annual meeting was April the 5th. I was there also. Dale and Steve were all in attendance. The actual report from Hoosier and all the financial data and operations report is all online on their website. Anybody can look at it, click through it at any time. We had a small meeting after the annual meeting. And I was elected the chairman of the Finance and Audit Committee by the board. So
Congrats.
that is really all I have to report.
But you mentioned the annual meeting though, I really enjoyed, I think it was the first speaker that talked about the change in populations throughout rural and what have you. And I
Tom Halverson.
Yeah.
His name right here.
thought he really did
Bank CEO.
yeah, he is the Quebec, did a nice job.
Yeah, he talked about the difference in the birth rate. It's be 3.6, now it's down to 1.8. And hot topic item, immigration, but how if we did not have immigration, the impact it would have on.
It was one of the rare times I heard there was like a proponent of
It was very much a proponent said, the world we live in right now would be totally different if we didn't have it. So,
Very good. From an IEC perspective, Burr Whitland presented the audit report. Again, it was a clean opinion. John Cassidy presided at his first meeting, did well. He's planning to visit, of course, as many REMCs as possible. And we'll try to get him down here sometime for that. There was a breakout session. We typically do breakout sessions when we meet. This one had to do with how do we communicate with legislators? And so we broke out to regions and, community involvement, if they have a legislative update, is one way. Some, I think CEOs just pick up the phone and try to make connections. So that's really what came out of that. Brian didn't have anything on it down. So we'll talk more about director training or conferences attended, and we already talked about the annual meeting. I also attended, and I think Jason did as well, the Southeastern, I know you did, the Southeastern annual meeting. And then I had something else. Yes, I was right. So, anybody else have anything on training or conferences? Any other item? I didn't include that on the agenda, but did anybody have any other items before we adjourn?
Auditors will be at the next meeting.
Okay.
If we change it at all, they need to know ASAP.
That's good. All right, I need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned. We will be going into executive session.